just wanted to talk for a quick minute, probably a long minute actually, about the Netflix movie, The Platform and The Platform 2, specifically The Platform 2, because I watched it a while ago and I didn't quite understand it all, and I wasn't even sure what I thought about it necessarily. Like, I was so conflicted. It's one of the things where I felt like I needed to rewatch it, but also didn't particularly want to, so I didn't at the time. So some of the details are hazy for me because it's been a bit, and I don't know any of the names, so don't quote me on that. I'm actually not going to use any of the names at all because I don't know them. But what was interesting for me, I like the idea of the platform. So there's spoilers all over the place. Spoilers, full of spoilers. Just going to say that now. But the platform had a really interesting premise, which was that there's a sort of vertical structure called the pit, and people sort of voluntarily enter for whatever reason. Everybody supposedly has some benefit, whether it's a college degree, getting forgiven for a sentence, time for whatever. Everybody is there for some purpose, and everybody's allowed to bring one comfort item. Okay, so that's interesting enough, and there's a certain amount of floors, but in the platform you don't know how deep it is. So there's a finite number of floors, but from their perspective it's sort of infinite in that they're not sure how far it goes because there's not a lot of communication. And the structure is that there's food that starts out on this big table, and the platform, which is called the thing that brings food between the levels, there's sort of a rectangular hole in the floor where the food descends on this table. And so the people at the top get a completely untouched table of food. There's 2 people per level, untouched table of food. They eat whatever, then it goes to the next level, and so on down. And at the beginning of the platform, there is no structure here. It's just, if you're lucky enough to be on a top level, you eat all you can because every month it changes and you may end up on a different level completely. So sometimes you get lucky and you're closer to the top, and sometimes you get really unlucky, you're at the bottom, which for a lot of people it seems a death sentence. So you're taking a lot of risk if you're signing up for this sort of experiment, which I see it as an experiment. I also thought it was interesting because I love reading that the book, the comfort item that the main character in the first one picked is Don Quixote, which I guess the themes in that are interesting in that there's a lot of what is real, what is reality. There's sort of this science fiction-y quality to the platform that kind of makes you doubt what is actually going on or if things are what they seem. For example, there's a character where we don't know, she's going around looking for her child. Does she really have a child? Is it her child? Is there a child? We don't know. And they end up sort of trying to form a structure where everybody only eats what they need and then lets other people have more, because the idea is that if people only have what they need, that there would be enough for everybody. And that's where I think this is an experiment, because I don't think generally humans are this cruel for no reason. And putting people at the bottom of a pit, you are subjecting them to death, deprivation, starvation, all kinds of things. And if you try to store food away, the level becomes really hot, you die. Like, there's extreme consequences for breaking any of the rules that are set in the pit itself. And they don't really ever see anybody from it. It's sort of very anonymous. They get knocked out by gas to switch months. They wake up in a new level, which is marked on what level they are. With various things. People are going to various lengths to survive, to decide how they're going to make it through. And people end up fighting with each other, obviously. And, at some point, if you're on a higher level and you don't need to fight for survival, sure, you can get along great. If you're getting to the point where you're at a lower level, you may end up trying to kill and eat your cellmate for survival. So I think it really highlights sort of the have so much capacity to be good. It's mostly dependent on the ideal circumstances that they find themselves in. And if circumstances require you to just survive, it's more likely that people are going to lose those better parts of their nature. And it's hard to predict how somebody is actually going to react in that situation. So it was interesting to see that play out in the platform. Platform 2 confused me a lot because why were there all these children? It seemed a lot more like, I don't know, science fiction-y than the first one. It left a lot more questions than answers in some respects for me. I didn't quite understand what they were going for all the time. But the important thing was that it took a while to realize, but they were actually, this happened before the events of the platform. So this was actually a sequel, or prequel, sorry, not a sequel. So it comes off like a sequel because it's platform 2, but the events happened before. And the most interesting thing I thought there is that in the first one, he's working so hard to send a symbol, to send a message, to create a system to protect people. Now, when you get to the platform 2, this system is actually in place. They previously had a system, and this system is rigorously enforced. It is enforced to the point where any infraction from this system, which is created and enforced by the people that are living in the pit, can result in various punishments, including losing a limb, like getting your arm cut off, or even death, depending on what you did. And you also learn something different, so that instead of an entire table of food, like you see in the original platform, you see instead that each person has selected their own meal. So there is an intention for each separate part of the meal to go to each person, which really clears up the idea that if you only eat your food and nobody else's, every single person would be fed. So you select the food, and that is the food you get every single day, except if you agree to trade food with another person. And if it's agreed, that's fine, you can trade. Same rules still apply. You can't hoard any food, you can't keep any food. And this is enforced to the level where if somebody has died for whatever reason, you are not allowed to eat that food. You are not allowed to let it go down to the next level. You actually have to throw away that food. Have to dispose of it. You can't eat it yourself. That breaks the rules that they've set in this structure. And this structure is enforced by specific people, but it's also enforced by the people above. So, for example, if something happens to break the rules, the people from the 2 levels above are sort of charged with going down and enforcing the punishment. So either that would be like cutting off a limb, killing the people, whatever the specific punishment is. And even if you have good intentions of following the structure, if you break that structure for any reason, let's say, for example, the one character goes when it wasn't her turn, she was not one of the 4 people that was supposed to go and handle something, and she got punished for it by losing an arm. So there's this extremely rigid structure. We also don't know how far it goes until we get to platform 2, and this is where, to me, it gets a little bit more like there's more elements that get added in beyond the simple idea of the platform and the pit. So once you realize there are in fact 333 levels, there are children involved, which you find out in the first one, but that seems really wrong. Like, this does not seem like any governmental sanctioned experiments in that case, because children inherently can't consent to be in this environment. And there's 333 levels. If you have 2 people per level when you start out, that would mean there's 666 people, which is a symbolic number. So clearly they're hinting at something more evil, diabolical going on than just this experimental structure of the platform, I believe. But I don't understand the children thing. I think it's sort of representative of sort of how humans act in groups, and so how you can start out with the best intentions, but that's structure breaks down over the course of time, and as it breaks down, you see some of this like natural sort of human behavior elements come out that's beyond the idealism of what you want to see, and that if the structure is not enforced rigorously, it falls apart completely, which you see in the beginning of the platform, because there is no structure. And every month they bring in somebody to replace the people who have died. People are moved around, so not everybody has an idea of what the structure is, except that they may wake up next to a roommate who's been on one of the top floors, knows all about this. We don't know what the structure looks like the farther we go. And then in the end, when you get to the very bottom, there's like a bunch of chuds or something, which I don't know if that was real, if it was symbolic of death, what it was. So I'm confused there. Somebody please tell me your opinion of this, and if it aligns at all with me, because I'm going off memory here from a while ago. It's been kind of bothering my brain. So I wanted to take a minute to talk about the platform, and especially the platform 2, which I feel like I had a pretty decent understanding of the platform. The platform 2 added a bunch of extra elements and other stuff that I was just having trouble piecing all together, especially not knowing originally that it was a prequel